them attacks are basically getting to a point where they just made up. Now, recently, maybe about less than a month ago, Harvard Shorenstein Center, Kennedy Center's, I believe, one of their schools, they put out a paper about American descendants of slavery, ADOS. The problem is that the paper is supposed to be an academic research paper, but reads like a political hit piece. A political hit piece not based on any facts. What I want to do now is to transition, and part of the reason that I have Cube here is because he was mentioned in his paper, and it's incorrect. Everything is said about ADOS is incorrect. Cube, you've also been dragged into this, and there's statements in this article, and I want to get into the article and ask before I said, have any of these people reached out to you before they put this out?
No.
Okay.
They're not gonna reach out. They don't care about the truth. They just want to hang on their article.
See, and this is the problem, Cube, is it's an academic research paper, so they have to care about the truth. I don't know if everybody understands the gravity of what Harvard just did through these researchers.
Well, it's technology. You know what I'm saying? It's truths and falsehoods mixed in together to create their own narrative. So it's to be expected. I think these schools like this have done a lot to ensure that we're at the bottom of this pyramid. So
these kind of articles lead to people like me being deplatformed. They take these articles and then they give it to MSNBC and they give it to YouTube and they give it to the government. You can get investigated by FBI or CIA behind this article. You better be right though. They're not right. And they're not just a little bit wrong.
I mean, to me, you gotta fight. You gotta fight for your rights. You gotta fight for your position. You gotta fight for the truth. So, I salute what you're doing. Having the information is the key.
In here from all around the country, we're just gonna get it in. We're gonna keep it civil. We're gonna keep it civil like the Survivor series on WWF. You remember them ring matches where they had the steel cage?
In the day. Hey, listen, I thought we were about to get a Survivor match set up for him, but he kind of, I think he ain't want any of that, so we're going.
All right. You know what's so funny? I just seen the shirt. No refunds, no peace.
No refunds, no peace. I had to bring it today. There's no way that you come on here and you talk about giving out checks in amounts of $12 and we don't say no refunds, no peace. I mean, you absolutely come into a conversation about the Tulsa Real Estate Fund and Jay Morrison, and you talk about 2.5+ years, and I got people sending me messages where they're getting $12.
So look, let's back up. Let's back up for the audience. This is Tony the Closer. I brought him on 2 times prior. Let's break down the difference in this show and the difference in the shows before. One difference is we got a special. We're going to be taking callers through the show. 310-388-3499 to call in. 310-388-3499 to call in. But the first show was about Tony the Closer and basically his situation with Jay Morrison involving the stripe and the event and everything else. The second show was about his march. No refunds, no peace on the Black House there in Atlanta, demanding that people get their due because they hadn't received any kind of dividends. Well, now we on the third show. And the third show is about the dividends. They done gave everybody $12. $12. 2 hot wing packs is what you could get for $12. And so they done gave that out after 3 years. We gonna go through some of the paperwork, how much they gave themselves, talking about Jay Morrison and his staff. We gonna go through some of the realities of what people invested in this and should have gotten on 8% per annum. They had per annum in the documents, but then somehow it ended up being $12. Look, Tony, you put up a check. It said $12.59 to be fair. I don't want to understate it. Tell me about this check that you put up that said $12.59 on your Instagram from the Tulsa Real Estate that was supposed to be a dividend.
Yeah, you know what's been happening recently. Obviously, with the protests that happened at the Black House, more and more people actually bringing complaints about the lack of information, transparency, or things of that nature with dividends, which have been the hot topic from Jay. He promised dividends back in October of last year, prior to the actual protest. He was like, we had to make it through August 20th, and the big bad wolf is coming to town. And then after that, we would have dividend day, and then October came and went, no dividend day, and so obviously with the amount of attention that was placed on the protest and what was happening with Jay, people just obviously were reaching out to me. Hey, I want a refund. How do I get a refund? What are the steps for me to be able to get a refund, etc.? So recently, when the first wave of dividends with Jay had made this big announcement that the Tulsa Real Estate Fund was finally paying out, right? Finally, people were going to be getting their dividends. And I began getting people that were sending me DMs, and they were just pissed, right? You had a lot of people who, had their money tied up for 2.5+ years. And have been asking for information on their money when they were going to actually be able to receive a dividend, and people were investing a minimum of $500, and so just for
right. Let me jump in.
They had to invest at least $500, but people were sending me checks where they were getting their first dividend returns, and they were getting returns for $12.50 or something of that nature.
Let me jump in here because I wanna get something on screen so that we can actually see this. Let's get it on screen. T, you see this? You remember this? The power couple is set on purchasing and developing an entire town on the Shade Room. Is that on your screen?
I see it. Yeah.
Oh, do we remember when this was going on? They was gonna buy a whole city, right? I was in the middle of trying to do politics. And I got nonsense about how this power couple, you understand, Ernestine and Jay Morrison, were going to buy the city. Now, nobody understood that Jay was in the middle of a bankruptcy and that we don't know what Ernestine's background is. No disrespect to her, but it ain't finance from what I understand. But they going to buy a city. They got the city behind them, and everybody got to talking. So I did a show 3 years ago saying, let me get the paperwork. When I got the paperwork and I started understanding who he was, what this fund was, I told everybody it didn't make no sense. Well, we're here 3 years later, and Frederick Scott has shown us on a breakdown that the ROI is 27.5 negative on this thing. You can do the math yourself, but the man broke it down way more than I can. I'm no accountant, but I'm just telling you, look at the management fee. We'll get into that in a second. Now, I looked into some management fees, T, and normally it's like 1-2%. We talking about top end managers. Jay was paying himself 5.5, but we all right. We doing that in a world where the middle black family makes $41,000. Again, I'll say it again. In America, the middle black home, not one person, whatever number of incomes makes $41,000, and he got them giving him $500. He took the money.
I speak on that a lot too, because I think that's very important. I think a lot of people, when we start talking to the tune of what the average black household makes, the median, when you start talking about $41,000 as a household income, every dollar counts. And when you start talking about every dollar counting, if you have the best interest of your people in the community, when you come out and you set up something like this in a fund, you would make it to where it would be to their benefit. And everything that we look at, it constantly seems to only benefit one side, and that's Jay Morrison and the Tulsa Real Estate Fund.
President Biden is traveling to Pennsylvania on Tuesday to promote the American Rescue Plan, the beginning of a 6-state presidential swing to highlight the $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief legislation that was signed into law last week. I want everybody to understand the debt owed to ADOS Americans. The reality is we have a multi-trillion-dollar debt. Before these bills were signed, nobody understood that the willingness of the government to undergird people that were collapsing to keep them from collapsing. But we're so collapsed and we're so problematic that they don't want to acknowledge we're collapsed because you made us ADOS. Brought us over on ships, then made us build the country and gave us no tie-in to be able to invest and grow with that country. We need to talk. The president, Vice President Kamala Harris, and their spouses are touring the country this week to tout the measure. which includes popular provisions such as additional unemployment benefits, a child tax credit, and $1,400 direct checks. They promised us $2,000. We'll talk about that later. And we ended up at $1,400, and they're going to add in the $600 before. But one of the problems that's happening for ADOS people in particular is the way they set this up is it's built around income rather than wealth. So what do I mean? For so many of us, we went to college and we secured an income that might jump above that median that I said earlier, that $41,000. But when you take out the student loans, we push right back down to near that median. But they don't take out the student loans for us. When you add in the fact what the government is saying, listen to me. The cutoffs they're using, $75,000 and $85,000, they're saying that people that make above that, they're not saying it out loud, they're whispering it. They got parents, particularly white parents, because the middle black family makes 41, that will give them the wealth, and we're not going to step in for that white parent. The problem for ADOS that went to UCLA, that went to Howard, that went to Stanford, that went to these schools, and somehow secured this $90,000 salary, them and their spouse together make $180,000, is that not only are they paying student debt, which brings them all the way down, they have nobody to ask to give them that wealth that the government has built into the system. And at the same time, they're being asked to share that money with their siblings that make less than the 41. They never built this system for us. They didn't consider us when they built the hierarchy, because in this hierarchy is supposed to be a whole reality of when you reach this tier, it means you come from this tier. But ADOS were never included. The Native Americans make sure they got their piece, though. We'll talk about it. And let me say this. I don't want anybody to say that this is about attacking Native Americans. I'm dealing with the realities of what the government should do, what the government should require when Native Americans receive wealth. And if they are going to acknowledge them, they definitely should acknowledge ADOS. That's what I'm dealing with. The relief measure also includes $350 billion in aid to states and local governments. $14 billion for vaccine distribution and $130 billion to assist schools with reopening. Help is here. Hope is here in real and tangible ways, the president said in remarks touting the American Rescue Plan on Monday. He promised to reach two giant goals over the next 10 days. The first is 100 million shots in the arm, talking about the vaccine, and the second is 100 million checks in people's pockets. But a lot of ADOS will be shut out of those checks because of a number of reasons. They said that the debt collectors can come after this check. They couldn't come after the first 600 in December, but they can come after this check. I'll talk about it later, but I found a study that said, I'm not saying this is absolute, but it said 35% of ADOS are in debt. What does it mean if you make it so they can take this money in debt? Can we talk? Instead of dealing with the black folks that put her in office, that put Joe Biden in office, that put the senators in Georgia in office, that gave Democrats the actual Senate and the presidency, we have this play where we're going to look down at migrant people that aren't even Americans before we deal with the homelessness, the incarceration, the low income, the no reparations, all that have happened to the black folks that built America. Can we talk? So they sending her down there, despite the fact that when you look at the vote, black folks almost singularly put the Democrats in office. When you look at this vote, according to the AP, it didn't happen the way they said it was going to happen. Black men supported this ticket despite Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's awful history with incarceration. The black men, black women supported this ticket. Black men, according to the AP, were at 86% support for Biden, which means Harris as well. And black women were at 93%. White men were at 39% for Biden, and white women were way down at 46%. But Latinos were much closer to white folks than they were to black folks. Latino men were at 59% support for Biden. 59%. They were at 66% vote support for Biden. Understand, that's 20 points lower for the women, the Latino women, than just black men. I think 24 points lower than black women. So we voted for Biden, saved him from what happened in the debacle in Florida when we looked down there with the Cubans that pretty much flipped Florida for Trump, basically made it so tight for Trump. We saved them from that. We brought home Georgia, begged for this black woman to be on the ticket because she's black. But we'll see. Let's get into the topic of the day, though. Evanston, Illinois becomes the first U.S. city to pay reparations to black residents. That is the cover of, I believe it was NBC and so many others, the first. Now, we're going to dig into the actual plan. We're going to dig into, we're not going to leave no stone unturned. We're going to do it together. We're going to dig into the plan that's on the website. When I look at the plan on the website, I want you guys to notice something on the cover. I've never seen this before. It says draft. You've announced the plan. The plan is gone public, but we still got drafts on the actual website. All right. But when we look at what we have in front of us, what we realize is that either the media got it wrong, the city got it wrong, or NARC then got involved with all of it and messed up the messaging. But somebody in here didn't understand this isn't reparations. Look, when we talk about reparative justice, the word has a trigger to tie it to what? U.S. slavery. That is the key element that we're really thinking about. Now, you can tie in Jim Crow, but we're talking about the people damaged by U.S. slavery and Jim Crow. Now, if you just want to say Jim Crow, your recipient group has to just be people that went through Jim Crow. We'll talk about it later in the discussion. We're talking about things when you look at this thing, when you look at so many things with reparations, what you find is that people don't seem to understand this is a multi-trillion-dollar debt. And the only entity large enough to deal with that, particularly post-deregulation and derivatives and all of the things in the games that were played in the 80s, is government, federal government. Now, I'm not against local, state government pressuring federal government, but don't tell me no housing plan that we've seen before in other cities is reparations just so you can take pictures. Evanston, Illinois becomes the first U.S. city to pay reparations to black residents. 5 things just giving you off the top before I get into the article. Number 1, it's already been done. It's already been done. I'm going to read an article from where they did something similar already. So you're going to do similar program to what they already did. Just call it reparations so you can take some pictures and make it seem like you've done something when in fact you've either done nothing or you might have even done some damage. And we'll talk about how. And we'll get into tax liability and things of the sort. You have number 2. It's not just for Adolf. So you sold it as reparations, which means that people thinking about slavery and Jim Crow, then you made it so the criteria includes everybody under the sun that comes from Africa. I don't know how that's going to hold up legally, but that's how you did it. Everybody that comes from Africa is a recipient group. Okay. It's not for slavery at all. It's just reparations, and we're going to think about Jim Crow. This is the kind of scatteredness you get out of groups that aren't ADOS, that aren't starting with the key element, which is a category for the American descendants of slavery. And in addition to that category, focusing and targeting on pressuring the federal government to release trillions of dollars and also change regulations and laws so that trillions of dollars actually ends up in transformation. And in addition, also has redistribution in a similar form than what we saw in South Africa. You actually can get past litigation with if you frame the argument and harden it. The next thing is they have $400,000 for this. They have $10 million overall. We don't even know if that money's going to be there. They always talk about the future. It's still nothing. It's a pittance. But then they have $400,000 on this right now, so they just going to give it to 16 people at lottery. They're not clear what the lottery is even in the document. So it's just going to be 16 people. And then the rest of the people that are basically, they got 13,000 people waiting for Section 8 or something like that. I'm going to read to you in that city. And so like instead of helping a bunch of black people get on Section 8 applications or get some counseling services or whatever, they are worried about this. Instead of worrying about potholes, streetlights, and Section 8 application processing, they want to do $400,000 to 16 people and include people that aren't ADOS. Can I talk? This don't make no sense. I just want to make it all make sense so we can get in here. 310-388-3499 is the call in. And also I want accounting after the $400,000 is distributed. I don't want a dollar going to any consultant or anyone else that has helped to processing fees and all of this. I want the full money to go to these recipients. This discussion is intersectionality, black girl magic, and the economic collapse of black males. We're having this discussion in the context of a world that has basically kind of decided that we're going to go down this intersectionality path, whether the data supports it or not. What my plan is to go back in history and look at Bureau of Labor data and show you the problems with the way the analysis was applied for intersectionality, to move to looking at wages. Well, actually, I'm going to go through different points in this thing. I'm going to go incarceration to abuse to wages to unemployment in present day to kind of show you the reality of where we're at. And in the end, I'm going to also talk about social dominance theory, which I think is either, you can see it as a wing off of intersectionality if applied properly, or you can actually see it as oppositional. We'll get into that, and that's the idea that the outgroup male is actually the most oppressed group. And when I get to the end of the data, you'll see why that actually does apply here in America. So we're in the chat. Let's have this discussion. Let's be spirited, but also be respectful. I know a lot of people are wound up in this discussion, whether they understand the content around it or not. They have created identities on top of this idea of double minority status, of oppression being duplicated based on combining gender with race. What I see is, as a result, you see a lot of things going on where gender actually ends up displacing race, followed by Jim Crow. I'm in the chat. Let me get to it, because I'm just talking theoretical now, and then we're going to move into data. To be fair, intersectionality as it's defined is the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as race, class, and gender as they apply to a given individual or group, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. And nowhere in there does it say black women. And nowhere in there does it say white women. And nowhere in there does it say black men. You have to follow the definition and allow it to tell you what happens when you combine gender and race. That is not what has happened with intersectionality. What has happened is that it had an agenda before it was created, and now everything is folded in, no matter what the data is, and I'll show you in a second, to make it work. So I know that this was created, as I understand it, whether in whole or in part, by Kimberly Crenshaw. I watched her speak. I went back and watched and read her original paper. No disrespect to her, but her paper lacked numbers. Her original paper in 1989 lacked so many numbers. Demarginalizing the intersection of race and sex, a black feminist critique of anti-discrimination doctrine, out of the University of Chicago. This is the original paper for intersectionality, Kimberly Crenshaw. I watch her speak at the Women of the World Festival. I want to be fair and read a quote that she said at the Women of the World Festival, and then I'll show you how the data just undermines the quote. Now, if intersectionality is a history project, let it be that. But if it is an actual application against both present time and even the present time when she was writing in 1989, then the paper fell short that she did, because it should have continued into 1980, and it didn't. It just kind of just stopped manufacturing in whatever era she was talking about, the 60s maybe, late 50s. I'll get into that too. I have the Bureau. See, you can't do the paper without having Bureau of Labor numbers. She don't have that. She has cases, but not Bureau of Labor numbers. So we understand the oppression that she's talking about and whether it's actually real. Now, I don't know if that was omitted on purpose or on accident, but you can't do the study or the paper that you do without those numbers. So I got an article here from Elizabeth Warren's website, Boston Globe. Warren Presley pushed Biden to cancel student loan debt. Massachusetts lawmaker asked White House to wipe away up to $50,000 per borrower. If you thought top progressive lawmakers from Massachusetts would stop jousting with the White House, now that a fellow Democrat is in office, you are mistaken. The new president was sworn in less than a month ago, but Elizabeth Warren and Representative Ayanna Pressley are wasting no time pushing Joe Biden to cancel up to $50,000 in student debt, each of the roughly 44 million Americans who have federal student loans. So 44 million Americans have $1.7 trillion in student debt. But I bet you nobody told you that 1.1 trillion of that is in white hands. I bet you that Elizabeth Warren, Ayanna Pressley, nobody told you that white people have 1.1 of the 1.7. And they have the money already. And we know because they pay it off in 20 years. Where we keep the debt because we don't have it, we all go to work. They have it. They just haven't transferred it yet. So when you forgive the student debt, they get to keep all that money and have you compete against it in the open market, in housing, education, everything else. This is a ruse. Hustle. I'm just telling you what it is and breaking it down. See, the problem is that when I talk to these people, they'll look at me like a deer in headlights. Did he really just say that? I didn't understand that. And I'm talking about Ayanna Pressley when I say it. I say it to her, she'll be like, I never thought of it that way. I need you to know what you're talking about before you speak on it. Because what you're doing right now is detrimental to black communities across this nation and very helpful to stabilize white ones. Colors from what's coming out about the $3 million worth of homes. I'm hearing a lot of stuff come out from everyday black folks across this country that don't understand certain elements, whether it be the fact that these deals, like when the overall deals from Warner Brothers and the like, they're not $1 million deals, to how book sales actually are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. They don't buy $3 million homes. Maybe if you are Stephen King and you have this great deal because you option your stuff to movies. I don't think we're placing her properly, but in addition, I don't think we're placing Black Lives Matter properly. Part of the fundamental problem we have with ADOS is I think we got contrasted with the group that isn't, in my view, organic. I'm going to use an article from tablet.com that really digs into Black Lives Matter and kind of, I think, frames, to me, possibly the source for these multiple millions of dollars. I'm going to talk about, Mike Brown's father and his whole thing about not receiving that money from the Black Lives Matter organization. And I'm also going to dig a bit into some of the issues chapters are having with the way that money was spent by the main organization for Black Lives Matter. Watkins trying to undermine reparations and ADOS and all the little side talking and all the little nonsense. Much about it. You remember he came out with the little orange outfit going to Ghana selling the trips and he going to be a king in Africa. Then we went silent. We remember the crypto and all the black people going to buy crypto with their retirement and the classes. Then we went silent. We remember that he tried to use the ADOS hashtag, was told to stop because we don't need you selling no classes with ADOS. Then you saw reparations, and now we'll talk about the t-shirts. So he started selling the reparations t-shirts. He told us it wasn't reasonable or feasible. Then next 3 months, 6 months later, he's selling t-shirts. Can we talk? I'm letting everybody fall in because we gonna get into this. Just making sure everybody know who we talking about. We talking about Boyce. 5 reasons black people won't get reparations anytime soon. We talking about him. I just want to make sure we all know. We talking about the guy who 4 months later, the initial video was December 18. 4 months later, he's selling these shirts. Hashtag reparations now. Trying to undermine hashtag ADOS. Just saying what happened. But then you victim. Let me start off and say I shout out Kwame Brown for standing up for himself, and he wasn't saying nothing to nobody, and he done dealt with different people, and y'all can feel how you feel about him, about his economics or whatever, but from man to man, I respect that you came out and you stood up for yourself, bro. What I will say is I'm going to specifically focus on Boyce because a lot of what he's saying we dealt with, not only as a group, but as individuals, in terms of gaslighting, in terms of victim playing, in terms of just being a problem for black politics and destructive in so many ways, and then playing victim. I'm going to go through this video in context. I'm not going to show it, but I'm going to go through this video, 5 reasons why black people won't get reparations, and show you the kind of destructive elements of seeds he planted. He mentioned Claude Anderson about 7 times in the video. He can't never come by himself. He can't never come by himself. He got to mention Claude. He ain't got no roots without Claude. You know, end of the day, people gonna feel how they feel about everything with Claude, but I'm saying to you, boys, we don't need to hear about Claude, we need to hear about you. You're the economics professor. I watched the economics video, and I don't hear no numbers. So let's be clear. Jeff Bezos, by himself, is worth $211 billion. Black America, together, according to the Federal Reserve, has $270 billion in private business wealth. The whole race, 46 million people, including black immigrants. If you just looked at ADOS, that number probably falls below just Jeff Bezos' wealth. ADOS people being Americans since slavery that built America and have no wealth, and largely now are telling me and Yvette Carnell and other folks like us that they don't need reparations. One man used a family gift that would be the equivalent of $1 million today to start Amazon. Told his family that there was a 70% chance that he would lose it in Bezos. And now he has the equivalent wealth of a whole sector of what Black America has in terms of private business. Victims, those people caught in the path of that storm, I want to talk today, give you guys a chance to call in. I know the power was out and it's going to be out for 1 million people for some time down in Louisiana, but maybe you have family there and you can call in and give us your take on everything so we can get an inside story on this thing. This is a sad day. We think back 16 years ago to the day, to Katrina, and we just say that, you know, the prayers go to the fact that the levees held, a few of them topped over, but that's not the same as them failing. Generally speaking, they held, and as a result, this became a wind event rather than a flooding event. We only have one or a few deaths reported so far, but as Biden said, we're expecting many more. Hopefully, it's not you or your family that lost a loved one down there in Louisiana to Ida. But I want to get into the discussion today. A lot of this discussion shows a limitation in people's basic understanding of Black folks in America. They got this show coming out, Our Kind of People, about wealthy upper class Black folk. We'll get into it in a minute with a discussion about truth, about numbers coming out of the federal government, and how not just unrealistic it is, but how nonsensical it is to call middle-class Black folks upper-class Black folks. We'll get into the numbers. What you see is that Lee Daniels has decided to, I guess, he was inspired. Well, I have the book. I don't play games. By this book. Now, he was inspired by this book that was published in 2000, basically created out of anecdotal interviews. There's little to any data in this book. It's just the only numbers pretty much are years. It's basically anecdotal interviews. He doesn't necessarily get people's accountants and things of the sort. And it's old. It's so old that it's largely irrelevant. And Lee Daniels is going to make a show about it in the middle of a pandemic eviction crisis, unemployment crisis. And y'all going to let this go down and watch this. Be in there talking about this is aspirational or inspirational or whatever nonsense you tell yourself to tell yourself this Gumby G.I. Joe show is actually relevant to anything going on today. The show is called Our Kind of People, directly talking about the title of this book. And again, the book, let's get into the chat. We're going to talk today. The book itself is Our Kind of People Inside America's Black Upper Class. When you dig into this, it's a historical review built on anecdotal interviews, but also he largely talking about Black middle class folk. He ain't talking about no upper class. The kind of things that make up what he's talking about let's start off with the back of the book so we can be fair. Again, this show is about the Our Kind of People show that Fox is putting out with this Yaya young lady that seems so very confused to me. I'm gonna let Yvette lay it out about what happened today with the announcement out of the Wall Street Journal about these $450,000 payments to I guess separated immigrant families. Go ahead, Vet.
Well, the first thing I want to say is that for people who don't understand down ballot Democrat, we didn't vote for Biden. So stop coming to my country and say, if y'all hadn't made us vote for Biden, no, you're just stupid. So stop coming into the thread and saying that. So what happened today was we saw Wall Street Journal reported, it wasn't us, Wall Street Journal reported that they're in negotiations to give migrant families $450,000 a piece. So you could legitimately even have $1 million families. Based on this reparations for migrants who were separated at the border. Now we have gone, how long we gone, Antonio, without reparations for ADOS? How long?
Hundreds of years. And we built America.
Never got anything. So that's what happened today. They're apparently in negotiations to make this reparations for migrants who came in 2018 a reality.
Talks. I have the wonderful Zoe Williams, relationship expert here. We're going to break this thing down. We have this article shared today for some reason about Black women and marrying down and how it costs them wealth. Zoe, you want to say that what's up to the audience? Because we're going to get right into it.
What up, people? Glad to be here, man. It's been a while since we did a show together, bro.
Yeah, we ain't done nothing like this in a while, but I saw this young lady, for some reason, share this article from 2015. She didn't tell people it was from 2015, which is the responsible thing to do. She just shared it like it was from today. The problem is that wealth has transformed since 2015. So you got 1,000 people sharing this like this article is still relevant in terms of wealth today. To give you some context, I want to talk about it because it seemed like people don't know. This article is written when white wealth is about right here. That means that they had about $75 trillion. Now they have, and they're above this now, $125 trillion. So you have a young lady who I don't believe knew, and even if she did know, it's worse. What she's sharing is largely irrelevant and old. Zoe, you want to speak to that before I get right into the article?
No, you setting it up beautifully, man, because this is something you and I have been talking about for quite some time. So I love the setup. So I'm listening and learning as your audience is as well.
Thanks. 310-388-3499. We're going to take a few calls towards the back end. But basically, to share the article is this concept of Black women that are educated. And it mixes concepts because it talks about marrying down as to all women, but then it flips it to Black women. But it never talks about, it's so patently like disrespectful. When I say this, we are all, and when I talk about all, I'm talking about ADOS people, American descendants of slavery, and Caribbeans included as well, coming from mass transatlantic slavery, particularly here in America, American chattel slavery. The gall and the audacity to put out an article that largely misframes wealth, and then also to share that article. So the Atlantic put it out and it should have been removed. I asked the editors they should remove it now. But then to share that article 6 years later, when within that 6 years, white America literally gained $50 trillion of wealth. That have been given this money, this $100 trillion through stocks, through programs, through PPP, that they are going to have to pay for their 40-year-old college kid through wealth transfers. They're going to have to come off of the coffers of their $1 million property. They're going to have to come out of the account that has $350,000, and they're going to have to transfer that to their children. Part of the pricing that we're seeing, whether it be cars, homes, education, presumes that if you went to college, your boomer gave you money. And will continue to give you money because the government gonna give it to them to give to you. So if you are ADOS and you don't have that boomer, you out. I'll show you in a second. So when Biden says the worst will pass, he's not talking about your worst. He's talking about white folks' worst. You don't have to play with me and guess. We're gonna get into it because a lot of new people probably gonna come in the show, but inflation is here. And I don't believe it's just a traditional form, but I wanted to explain inflation to you and break it down. Can we do that? Inflation hits workers already worn down by COVID-19. Prices going up, meat, milk, rent, housing, gas. Everything's going up. What is inflation? Let me make this bigger so you can see it. Inflation is an overall increase in the prices of goods or services in an economy. Over time, currency loses value and it doesn't have as much purchasing power as it once did. In other words, wherever a dollar can buy is reduced over time. Inflation can occur for a variety of reasons, like higher wages, lower interest rate changes, supply chain issues, or broader issues in the global economy. And I would add another one, giving white folks $100 trillion. Because that money got to go somewhere. So we just going to raise the prices because we know you got it. Let me give you an example. The Kia Telluride is an SUV. Many places are selling it anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 over MSRP. They can't sell it for that much over market cost, market price, I guess you could say, unless somebody's willing to buy it. The only person that's willing to buy that has to have transfers in this kind of economy that allow them to still want to access an American dream that's on hold. I'm just talking to you. Can we talk about it today? Y'all see this inflation? I know y'all feel it. Y'all seen the price of meat up? Y'all seen the price of cheese up? Everything is up. Except for your bank account. You don't have a transfer coming. Now, I see the queue is getting full. Again, 310-388-3499. Now, anyone can read this right here. But what I created was this here. Read that. But this is where the work come in. Created a chart we're going to go through right now to explain inflation to you. And I want to go through the chart. Before I do that, please subscribe to the channel. Press the bell, press the notification, share this. A lot of people need to hear this. Also, Patreon is Tone Talks. Cash App is Tone Talks. Please support this channel so that I can continue to bring these kind of shows, add to my equipment, add to my shows and everything else. Things like creating charts like this. Please support this channel because we got to talk about it. Because I don't think that a lot of people understand inflation and the way it shows up, and I want to make sure you understand. Inflation is hard to understand. Here's what it means. Inflation, a continuing rise in the general price level, usually attributed to an increase in the value of money and credit relative to available goods and services, i.e., in layman terms, it's when prices rise. So last week, meat was $3 a pound. This week, it's $4 a pound. They can't tell you why other than to tell you, oh, we had a supply issue. But they also don't tell you it's because we know you got, and they're not talking to you, they're talking to white folk. We know your grandmama got money in her pocket. We're going to get it up out of her through you. And if she don't give it to you, you don't get no meat. Well, what does that do to the ADOS person that's next to them that doesn't have that grandmother? Well, you should have got reparations. The value of the American dollar has decreased over the decades, thus causing the price of everything from food to soap to increase. A dollar is not worth as much as it was 50, 100, or 150 years ago. Well, what does it do to the price of a dollar if over the course of literally many of our lifetimes, 30 years or so, you give a group of people, white folks in this case, $100 trillion when they only had 25 before? That is why your homes are so expensive. That is why USC is now $60,000 for tuition alone. We'll get into that. It ain't just random inflation because of shortages. There is a new price value system in America. And the way you pay for things is a combination of wealth transfers, inheritance, and a layer of labor in the top 30 to 40%. So if you're out here telling your kids to become something, you got to pay for that. And the way you pay for that is multi-generational advantage that is held in policy through stocks, homes, and the like. What does that mean for ADOS that have been locked out? It means you are shut out. About several topics. The core of the show is going to be about Charlemagne, the God, formerly of the Breakfast Club, I believe. And now he's on this Comedy Central. I don't know if he does both or whatever. And his, whole altercation / issue with Kamala Harris this past weekend or so, and how Simone Sanders jumped in and everything else. We're going to have a discussion framing the context of not only that altercation or that issue, but also why Charlemagne shouldn't be here at all, speaking for Black America. If he wants to interview artists or rappers, go do that. What you see is the consequence of an empty set of black politics. What you see is the consequence of not being deferential to academia or academic backgrounds. What you see is the consequence of black people not doing the work for almost 25 to 30 years. Today, we'll break down the discussion